Hey guys, Daniel James here, and today we're going to be taking a look at Spitfire Audio's Albion 2, Loegria or Loegria. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, one of the two. The way we're going to do this, as always, is I've written a piece of music in the background, or track, and what we're going to do is take a listen to that first, and then I will go into what I used from Albion 2 to make it, and why I used it, and how I mixed it all in, all that good stuff. So here's the track. So there's the short track, and as you may have noticed, it wasn't one of my big bombastic epic cue type tracks, and there's a very good reason for that, and that is Albion 2 is all about the soft. I'm not sure if that's the aim, but all the instruments, like, it's the best kind of soft instruments I've ever heard in a library, which is awesome, and I'll get into what I used. So yeah, Albion 2 is more like Spitfires. For those of you who have seen my Albion 1 video, Albion 1 was more for those like mid to mid hard, mid loud kind of tracks. You know, like it was going for that big sound, you know, that big kind of filmic sound. And whereas with Albion 2, I've seen a lot of confusion with this. People are like, you know, well, what is Albion 2? Is it replacing? Is it an extension? And the best way to think of Albion 2 is almost like is you would use it in a different circumstance, a different situation, because Albion 2, everything is much softer. Like I mean, you could probably push this into an epic, you know, Albion 2 into an epic track, but it would sound like wrong, you know what I mean? You wouldn't be able to put your finger on it, but it'd sound wrong because you know, all the instruments are soft. They feel soft and small. And I think, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the sections that they recorded, so the amount of players, the amount of violin players, the amount of cello players, are smaller ensembles, so there's less people physically playing, which is why it's softer. So you would use this library in, you know, like in a situation where you need soft or, you know, whimsical, or just kind of like I went for here, kind of magical thing. So let's take a look at the interface. As you can see, I've loaded up a lot of different instruments here. So what is Albion 2? Let's take a look. So you get Albion 2. You got five different folders that you can go into, and the one we're going to be mostly looking at today is the Albion Orchestra, because that's what I've used the most. We'll go into the other ones later. So when you get Albion 2, you click it in, and these are your patches. So you get a euphonium, you get a high and a low recorder, and you get sackbuts, which I think is like the brass. I'm not sure what a sackbut is, but it sounds like brass. So these are the brass, high and low, and then you get strings, high and low. Now it doesn't look like that much, you know what I mean? Like if you were to compare this with something like LA scoring strings, you know, which has got lots of different let's say this is just strings, you know, like lots of different articulations. Now what they've done with Albion 2, which I quite like, is if you take a look here, so strings high, here if you look down here, you can see all these different different notes on the stave, and they basically are different articulations. This little button underneath, I'll stop saying basically in a second, but these little buttons underneath mean, is the articulation on? Can you switch to it? Now, one problem I had with this library, which is why I've loaded up so many, is that I wish they would put which key switch each of these are on, you know, just like putting a little C1 above it so that I would know, because when I'm composing, a lot of the time I don't bother to sit and wait around, you know, to figure out what key switch I need to use. I'll just load up another patch and click it. So let's say here, so let's just go over what they are. So there are shorts. Let me take a look. I'll load up another high one so I can switch it around without messing up the track. So we just take a look. So strings high. So the first one, basically staccato. Then you have C sordino, which is sordino, basically muted staccatos, which sound this. Then you get pizzicato, which is like. Which is cool. This looks like col legno, which is when they kind of slap it. They kind of sounded rude when they slap the string with the bow. Normally used in like horror scores from, you know, my memory. This looks like a whole note, although it's repeated. All of these, by the way, are mod wheel controlled. If you move the mod wheel, it's the dynamics. Then you have half note. Now these sound looped, so I'm not sure what the difference is between the whole note and the half. And as you can hear, it's got a very nice roomy sound. I've of course got lots of reverb on, but we'll take some of that off later. Then we've got con sordino. As you can see, there's lots of articulations. So those of you who are worried about, you know, not having lots of articulations because of the instrument list, there are actually a lot here. Con sordino, which is muted again, but longs. Beautiful kind of soft, used a lot in those scenes in films, you know, where everything's all you know, all sad or magical. Then we've got these, which are the legatos, I think. So you can this is monophonic. You can only play one note at a time. If you play two, you know, you get that weird thing. And this actually brings me to like my other slight issue that I have with this library. Is I wish there was an ADSR so that I could increase the release time. Because one thing I noticed is that when you release the notes, you not so much on these notes, but on like the sustained notes like this, when you hold a note and let go, it ends very suddenly. You know, so if I was doing a I mean, like, okay, bad example, but when, like, you'll hear it in the track I'll show you, sometimes you get that sucking effect, which is not as rude as it sounds. It's basically when you let go of a group, say you're playing a chord, and then you move to another chord. When you move to the chord, the first notes end so suddenly, which is kind of unnatural, because the strings aren't actually ending the note, they move to the next. So, like, if you were doing like a D to a B flat, so you're only changing the A to the B flat, you know, that A isn't actually ending, it's moving up to the B flat. However, in samples, it moves up, you know, the A stops. And there's a slight sucking effect, which is when the note ends too suddenly, kind of. Again, bad example. It's always when I want to show an issue, but don't get me wrong though, that's not a big issue. You know, it's just a little pet peeve of mine, but there are ways around it, and I'll show you those when we get up into the actual track. Then you get half note legato, which feels like it has like an internal swell in the actual note. So like, you know, the string player plays hard and then goes soft. Which is awesome. Then we've got tremolo, I think. These tremolos are beautiful, by the way. Again, I keep saying we'll have a look at it in the track, but it does soft so well. I mean, it's very hard to, you know, there's a lot of string libraries around, and the soft articulation is always like, for me personally, it's like a holy grail, trying to find soft articulations that work in soft situations. Like if you use Symphobia, you know what I mean? It feels so large. So when you try and play it soft, it just feels wrong. Again, like I was saying, if you tried to push this library into Epic, it would, you know, you could make it happen, but it would sound wrong and you couldn't put your finger on it. Whereas this has got the soft notes, which are kind of like, you know what I mean? It feels soft, which I love. I absolutely love. We move on. I'm not sure what this note is. Let's have a look. Let's have a listen. That sounds like harmonics. Harmonics will forever be Inception to me, I think. And again, this is something I talk about in a few of my previous libraries, but there are a few articulations in libraries that kind of sing just because of the way they are, and I'm not sure why it happens. Maybe it's the way that the actual strings disturb the air, but when you get things like tremolo or harmonics like this one, there's something about the way the strings play that they excite the air in the space they're recorded. These were all recorded at Air Lyndhurst, I believe, which is you know, used a lot for Hollywood films and games and all that. But that you get this really nice room tone. I'll just turn the reverb off. There's a kind of warmth, or like it's hard to explain, but there's an air above the sample. You know what I mean? That you can hear, you can almost feel the room that they're recorded in. If you play two. And there's just something magical about that, which gives that kind of feeling of, you know, that really nice air feeling. And a nice little trick is when you get ones like that, particularly ones that do this quite well are normally tremolos, you know, because the strings are moving around quite a bit. Oh. And a nice little trick that I use quite a lot to add that kind of that feeling of air in a track is I'll layer this under something which normally you wouldn't, like a string line, and you put reverb on, and particularly algorithmic reverb, it will take the air sound and add reverb to that, which gives you like this really airy sound, which sounds like this. And that air just kind of trails out, which is wonderful. I'm not sure what these ones are. Let's have a listen. Oh, there we go. We've got trills. So these sound like... Trills will for always be Mission Impossible to me. Anyone else agree? These sound like major trills. Cool. And then we've got the, okay, let's see if I can pronounce this right, flautando. Oh, there's me trying to figure out what everything is. If you look down in the bottom left, it tells you what it is. That would have come in handy a second ago. Okay, so flautando. I mean, it's an Italian word, so flautando sounds like a pizza topping. This is basically, I had to look it up, but it means the strings play flute-like. So they try and get the tone of a flute. And this is my favourite patch. If you, I'll show you this now, being as though I'm talking about it. But in the multis, you get you can load up your like multis. So basically, you can make it so that it's full, like the full keyboard is just one articulation. So strings flautando, which I actually use, you can see these don't actually have like the articulation window underneath, so you can't change it. But both of these high and low, you know, are on CC1, which means I can just play the flautando, which I'll actually do. This is what a flautando sounds like, you know. It's a very kind of soft, you know, like the name implies, it's a flute-like articulation, so it sounds like this. My keyboard just decided it wanted to switch itself off, so I had to reset it there. Let's hope it comes back on. Well, it will eventually. But yes, so that's flautando, tando. Just need to keep resetting my keyboard till it works. So that's all the articulations you get. You get the same for the lows. And now let's take a look at the actual string section I wrote. So let's go through bit by bit. As you can see, I start off with my, like I just showed, that the flautando multi. So this is an ensemble. This covers the keyboard, and this was my this is actually what the first thing I wrote. This is what the whole track was based off, and I just wanted to block down some chords, you know, see how it sounded, and it ended up becoming the track. So let's just take a quick listen what it sounds like. So you can see I've got big chord and you know, a double bass line down here. So as you can hear, it borderlined on the unnatural, which is one thing you can get away with samples. I know that there's purists out there right now who are saying how terrible I am at writing music. As you can see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got 8 separate lines. But as these are smaller sections, you know, I'm not cheating because I could just hire more players. So as you can see, I tried like this little inner melody, which was kind of cool. And let me just show you what that sounded like. Yeah, but at the time it wasn't loud enough, so I pulled in the legato, played the same line. Now, it's hard to tell when you play them like that, but the tones of them are actually very different. So the flautando, you know, like again, like the name implies, is flute-like, which is like this, and then the legato is a bit more harsh. But you put the two together, and you get a completely different tone. That's you know, the basic principle of orchestration. You put two things together and make a different sound. But you put these two together, you get much of a much airier sound with a lot more definition. That's one thing I should quickly mention, is that each of these patches has a you can change the mic position. I didn't mention this in Albion 1, and people gave me stick for it, so I'll mention it now. So you get close, tree, ambient, and something else. What's this one? What's O? What is O? Anyway, and O. Close mics are close mics. Tree mics are like the ones up in the air. Ambient mics are far back. In fact, I should probably show you. Let me play the just the flautando, and I'll change the mics. I'll turn the reverb off as well, so you can hear the difference in mic. That's close. This is the tree. As you can see, by the way, these are only using like 5 megabytes of RAM, so they're quite good if you want to sketch something out. Ambient sounds like this. I think maybe the O is like around for like surround sound, but a lot of people like to layer the tree and the close mics together. I've seen that as like a common combination, but I normally stick it on the tree, just the tree mics, because they kind of give you that room sound and it's close enough for my taste. Just like that. And then, because normally I'll run it through my own reverb settings, when I turn it on, it gives me that kind of airy sound that I like. So anyway, back to it. So we've got this melody coming in, and then we have this little string section here, which goes. And that's a very nice sounding low section. So on number 3, we're using the, which articulation we're using? We're using the whole note. In fact, let me try that with the half. And the lows in this, the first thing I noticed is because a lot of the string libraries are recorded with lots more players in the low string section. You know, normally there's more players for your bass end, and it's a very noticeable difference when you have a lot of low string players and a few, because you actually get more of the sound of the cello. If that makes any sense at all. So if you were to load up, you know, something like Symphobia and play the lows, it's got a very kind of unique sound when there's lots of people playing together, which again plays into that, you know, it sounds better when it's when you want soft. The less players has a more appropriate feel to it, which is So then we move into this little next section here, and one little trick I brought in here is I use the tremolos. This is a tremolo pan, and the reason I use this is to basically make it feel, for lack of a better expression, cold. I tried to make it feel cold by having a high string tremolo, which sounds like this. And it just adds like almost air into the like I was mentioning earlier. It's one of those patches that adds air, so when you put it with the other string parts, which are on number 4, so which articulation was that doing? That's another reason I didn't use key switches. It's easier for me to see which ones I used where. This is con sordino, so these are muted sustains, so they sound like this when you layer it in. And you can tell me if I got it or not, but I was going for like cold here. Very good at going soft. And con sordino, as you can see, the muted, these muted sustains, this was where the way the strings finish quite suddenly came in handy, because I could do like these little builds. And I actually used some flautando just to flautando to make some little harmonies. They just do that over the top, which just adds another little extra harmony, which is nice. You know, adds that kind of distance in between the notes, which, you know, that extra room. Okay, this is where I start to sound a little bit pretentious, but the aim here is, so I use these stabs, as you can see. They're not stabs, but you can see there's a lot of physical space in between the notes, which is where the reverb goes in. And the way I imagined it was that this space would feel like space, you know, actual air. And then you fill that with the tremolo. That's what makes it, in my opinion, feel cold, is that you've got that kind of high string note, which is, you know, telling you that it's meant to be like cold or, you know, wide. And then these little, you know, the physical space in between the notes is actually, I'd say, more important than the notes themselves, you know. The notes are there to let you know that the silence has meaning. Again, pretentious, but I'm allowed to be. It's my video. Okay, so then I bring back in the low string parts, you know, the low string sustains. In just these big wide chords. Again, because there's less players playing the actual notes, playing, you know, so each note has got less physical people in the real world playing one of those notes. I didn't feel too bad about using quite big extended chords. You know, these go into 4 different sections, so there's less players, so it works out about roughly a normal size section. Almost like using Divisi sections from LA Score, from LAS, yeah. And then we've got this little section down here, which I wanted to use the consordino staccatos, which sound like this. And these are quite cool because a lot of staccatos are recorded very powerfully, you know, like dun, dun. And it's staccatos are never really recorded very soft because not many people use staccatos very soft. And particularly the consordinos, because they're muted, they're almost softer by design. I mean, if I was to play, let me just find that high. If I was to change it to the normal ones, you can hear a staccato is very kind of aggressive just by nature. And whilst these ones are softer than anything you'd find elsewhere, the fact that they recorded consordino ones as well is very useful because it's even softer, you know what I mean? So you can actually have them, you can have your staccatos as a very background instrument, which sounds like this. And consordino, again, like I was talking earlier about how certain articulations have air, consordino being muted, it does add an extra little like layer of air to the sound of the actual string, which you know, again, can make it sound really soft. You know, why not change the pizzicato? I mean, this is one of the cool things about you know, about things like this, not things, about patches like this, particularly like Spitfire are doing them really well, that they're, you know, Spitfire, and I think Cinematic Strings had one where they have all the articulations on one panel and you can switch between. It's good when you're doing shorts because you can actually audition things, you know. You can see, okay, what would it sound like if I had like staccato with with pizzicato over the top, or the other way around. And by themselves, they sound a little bit kind of loose and a little bit, not the sound of the string, like the actual part I played sounds a bit shitty by itself. But when you put it in the track, You know, it's these like pinged instruments, by the way, are not from Albion. This is the Celeste is from True Strike, and the piano, I believe, is Adio, but they're basically doubling. They're doubling this. Again, just an orchestrational thing, trying to make it feel a little bit whimsical. So that's like the console dinner, and I'll show you one more thing. Yeah, so that's pretty much the whole string section. One thing I want to show you now before I move on to the brass is the ostinatum script has changed a little bit. So I'll just show you how it's changed. If my keyboard dies again, I'll let you know. So basically now you get to choose the actual, in fact I'm going to double this, change this to, yeah, screw it, we'll keep it on 8. So this could all backfire, by the way, but we'll see. So let me just load some low strings as well. By the way, if you wanted to say, as you can see, I've got 25 megs loaded into RAM. If you wanted to save space, you know, you can always turn ones off. Now it's only 19, and I'm only planning on using the staccatos. So I've got my highs and my lows both on oh, not number 1, number 8, both on MIDI 8, which are being controlled over here. And now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try, and probably fail, to create like an interesting rhythm between the two. So let's say on the strings we want 8 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now if I was to put it in ascending, now I'm holding a chord. If you look down the bottom here, you'll see that I'm holding a chord, but the note's the same note. Now what you have to do with ostinatum is you have to actually drag these, so this will play the second note, then the first note, but I'm actually going to do something a little sneaky here. So I'm going to go 2, 3, I don't know, 2, 4, and then 2, 3, 4, 3. I don't know what that's going to sound like, and then it would sound like so. But then you can also do something interesting. You can add different rhythms in. So like I could have let's say 4/16 all playing just the 1. So if I play a chord now with the 1 would be down here. Oh, and I need to change this to ascending. Why is it not working? I need to figure out what I've done wrong here. Well, screw that then. That idea is going. Okay, so let's just take these back. So let's say, yeah, so 2, let's have 1. You see, it's always good to fail in these videos because then you can see that I'm a human being. So let's now throw in like, you know, a 16th. Throw a 16th note in there. And then another. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4.5 beats. And then we can have 5.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, half. 6, 7, and then we'll add an 8th one. So let's go 4, 1, 2, 4. This will probably sound rubbish, but just, you know, I'm just freeballing it. And now if I play a 4-note chord, so you can actually create your own little rhythms. And another thing that's cool is you can, I'm just going to double time this. This will probably mess everything up, but who cares? You know, you can create those, but then you can also add, let's say I wanted like a Bulgarian 16th kind of thing going on, so the accents are here. Obviously that's a little bit too loud, but we can turn that down. So now the accents will be on those notes. which is a good way of making, you know, making these cool little. And this is another point where an ADSR would come in handy, because if you go fast, you're stuck with the length of the note. You know. Let me turn off the reverb. Kind of cool. But yeah, that's basically how the ostinatum script works. What I was trying to do earlier is I was trying to have the 1 be on the low strings, but for whatever reason that wasn't working. You know, it happens. And then have like a different kind of off rhythm. So you could set up a rhythm like this and then have your lows, you know, doing a completely different rhythm. You know, you can just set up like dum 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 dum, you know, have that on number 9. Or you know, whatever you like. So that's how the ostinatum works. You can have the notes, by the way, descending. What it means by ascending, descending is if you look at, I'm going to play a D chord here. You see D, F and A pop up. And I'll play a D on top. Now if I change the inner voice, if I change the A to say a G, you can see that it goes in to number 3, beat number 3. And that's because in the order I'm holding the keys, if you look down here, by the way, this is awkward trying to hold this with the mouse at the same time. As you can see, the 3rd note is the A. So if I change the 3rd note to the G, you can see it stays as the 3rd note. If I change it to a B flat, it changes. However, if I change, say, the D to the C, it's now the 4th because it's in the ascending. So if I change the 2nd note down here, if I change the F to the E, you can see the 2nd note change to the E. So that's what ascending means. It means it will always pick the lowest note as 1, the next highest as 2. Descending is, you know, as you imagine, it's the highest note is always first. So this D is going to be first. This will be 2. This will be 3. This will be 4. If I move this, that's now 2. And order pressed is only for those who, you know, who are a bit braver. Is whatever order you press them in. So if I was to go, as you can see, the A is 2nd. You know, this A is 2nd, even though in the order of things it would come, you know, somewhere else. And the F is 3rd. So it's going D, A, F, D, D, A, F, D. So, I mean, you know, there's lots of different ways you can use it in your context of your track. You know, I've rambled on for a little bit about strings. So that's the strings. As you heard, very, very soft, very quiet, and I love the sound of the strings. They're my favourite part, but we'll move on to my next favourite part, which is the brass, or the brass, as they say down south. So my brass section really starts here. And the good thing about these brass is they're unlike typical brass libraries. For those of you who've got maybe cine brass or orchestral brass, Hollywood brass or whatever, they've all got quite big sounds, whereas this has a very nice kind of noble, what are these two things doing? Anyway, they're having fun. It's got a very noble kind of sound, you know. It's very kind of noble is actually not a bad word to describe it. And the first instrument is a euphonium. And if you're not sure what a euphonium is, you're going to have to Google it, because I can't for the life of me describe what one looks like. And as you can see here, you actually get less articulations, but the one I used, and the one that is actually very impressive, and this is like my go-to soft horn library now. So instead of using a French horn, I think I'll use this. It's got a very nice legato to it. So You know, it's got a very nice, noble. No, I'm just going to keep saying noble until everybody agrees that it's noble. So it comes down to, it goes relatively low. It's a very kind of mid instrument. So the range is from down here, from your B up to an A. So, you know, you've got quite a bit of range for melodies. Nice range for things. So 69 megabytes loaded in. If I just have the legato by itself, it's only 44 megs. If I turn the legato off and then just have the staccato, 15. I need to actually select it. There we go. Very nice sound, very soft again, you know, that's the point of the library. And we have the very short. These are velocity controlled, I'm seeing. So the softer I push, and then if I push hard. And a good thing about this that you won't find anywhere else is it's actually got the ostinatum script for the brass, which is good, you know, if you want to create some ostinatos, which is the point of ostinatum. Let's go with ascending. 1 3 2 3. Now I wonder why that took so long to click in. I could add an extra 2 beats on the end, so it goes. Let's add this as 2 1 2 1. No, 2 3. Like this. In fact, let me throw a 4 in there. 4 can be there, so we can go. As you can hear with the short notes, it creates a very nice kind of, you know, you could use that as a basis for a track. You know, you could start a track with something like that, you know, big 5th chord. In fact, that goes out of the range, so there we go. Something like this. So that's very useful, you know, for creating the ostinatums, as the name implies. Then we have just the sustains, which are controlled by the mod wheel. Oh, I cocked it up, but yeah, it's got a nice, nice if you want to do chords, you know. That would be my keyboard stopping working again. And this is something I didn't use here because I needed to use the sackbuts. I wanted to show what they could do. But normally, like when you're doing, you know, when you've got that noble sound, you want something like, you want a nice chordal brass sound. You know, that's quite often how brass is written for in, or you know, in these romantic style tracks. You know, the horns will play in chords. That could be a lie. I could have just made that up, but. Again, my keyboard died, but it has problem with power all of a sudden. So I think it's time to get a new one. Recommendations in the comments. Anyway, so, you know, it's got a very nice, noble sound, which works perfectly if you need to do, like, soft chords. I mean, one thing I often do is, I'll just give you a quick demonstration, is I like to do chordal brass. You know, and then I'll hold the sustain pedal and I'll whack on the piano. You know, it's got a very kind of whoa. You can get a very nice kind of tone. My keyboard kept dying as I was trying to play the piano there, so this is turning into a bit of a clusterfuck of a video, but we'll get through it together. Anyway, so next up we've got in this first section we have this here, which is my sackbut lows. Again, I don't know what these two are doing. I can only apologise. They're it's like they're laughing at me. Anyway, so again, same as the euphonium, you get you know, you get all your mic positions, and you get these 4 articulations. You get short, very short, sustain, and well, long they call it, but it's a sustain, and legato. I didn't use the legato here, but let's take a listen to it. So this is the one I used, which is the longs. I'll turn on the legato. Oh, I'm actually going out of range there, I think. Yeah, the range is down here. There's a very distinctive gap between. I'm not sure if that's the instrument that's being played or if that's... But anyway, kind of cool. Turn that off. Then we got like the shorts again. We got like very shorts. And they go down to, again, very small sections, so they're a very small sound. So that's pretty much what that is. I mean, it's not much else to talk to other than that's what it sounds like. I'll just show you the sustains again. Cool sound. Okay, so next up we have, I did a little thing here. Feels like my sustain pedal's stuck on. I told you it's turned into a clusterfuck. Everything's breaking. So yeah, but then we go to the high sack. No, this is the recorder, I believe. So you also get in this library, you get some recorder sounds, which sound, as you can imagine, like recorders. Oh, it doesn't go down that low. but yeah, you get a low recorder and you get high recorders. I only use the high ones here. I can load the low ones in. Let me just quickly do that. It's on number 5, so low recorders. And that's playing a staccato, so I imagine it's, yep, you've got 3 articulations of this, short, long. If you want some cool, sounds like someone's munching in the background. Where's it gone? What is that sound? It's like someone's eating their biscuits in the background. And legato. See, I guess the what's that sound again? They've actually got a very nice tone to them. The way I use them here is I had a little. Just as a nice little counterpoint, you know, to add a little bit of musical air to it, and then we got like this. Just adding into the background with some recorders. Then we've got some, then we end up with some low sackbuts. And what's this? What we got here? This is the high sackbuts. Now these actually have more articulations. Let me just show you what you get with the high sackbuts. So you get shorts, very short. You get marcato shorts, which is like a long. In fact, it's not long at all, it's just hard. Then you get marcato long, which will be long. Good for those kinds of you know, just good for those, but almost like those big mega horn things you get, but in brass form. That'd be good for layering strings. Then you get the longs. And legato. I'd have to say my favourite brass sound in this library is the euphonium. Very soft, very smooth, fits in with the low. So then we move on to the percussion. Now I cheated a little bit. I used the cymbals from Albion 1, but it was from the Albion 1 expansion. So if any of you have got Albion 1 and have never updated it, you should go get it, because you get some extra cymbals and such. But yeah, so let me just go over some of the percussion. I'll load these in. So that's the strings and the brass done, and that's the majority of the library as I would use it. And you know, like I say, in these videos, it's all about how I would personally use it in my setup. You know, so if I don't cover everything, that's why, because I like to, you know, use what I would use as if I was using it professionally. So end of days, this is basically, you get two different types. You get loose and tight, and they sound like this. And one thing that's kind of, not like counterproductive, but one thing that made me chuckle is that the percussion in Albion 2 is actually some of the biggest I've heard for a while, which is really, which is kind of funny, because everything else is really soft, you know. Phasing there, but you get these, you know, I've always loved Albion's percussion. It sounds great in the air. These are the loose ones. Loose seems to mean loud for this library for some reason. So if we just, what we'll do now is just load in some of the other ones. So going back to the instruments, we covered everything in the these are all the articulations you get for the orchestra, which are the ones I would use the most. But then you get the percussion, which I would also use a lot, but I didn't for this track because it wasn't a very percussive one. So Easter Island hit. These in Albion 1 you had Easter Island hits, which were basically like low boomy hits. Those ones not so much. And mostly you would use these as accents, you know, like the start of a, you know, if you've got like a beat somewhere. Let's try it in the track. You know what I mean? They're accents. And I imagine if you layered them in, you could create some big epic things with these. Although, as you heard, if you wanted them to fit in with the actual track, you know, maybe turning them down a bit, because they are rather loud. You know, so the tone is uniform with the rest of the sound because it's recorded in the same hall. However, these are quite big, so if you're looking for, you know, that kind of big drums, these are cool. What I didn't mean it. What? No. End of days. Fine drums. Now these are obviously round robin, because if you look at the memory usage, 110 megabytes compared to, you know, like the strings were using like 5 megabytes, you know, for the flautandos, for example. Now these have close and tree. If I turn the close mics off, these are just the tree. As you can see, that's halved it. Like with 2 mics, it's 110 megs, and with 1, it's 50. So the way I always think of it is the amount of RAM you've got is your budget. You know, the amount of RAM you have in your machine that isn't being used, that's like your budget for your track. And then the amount of RAM each patch is using is money. You know, that's how I always think of it. That's how I always end up with, you know, because I only have 8 gigs of RAM, so, you know, I can't load every single sample that I've got. So, you know, I would normally choose to only use 1 mic position because, you know, it's either £110 or £50, you know, for my £8,000 budget that I have. So, you know, if you think of it like that, you can be a bit resourceful. And most of the times I put things through reverb anyway, so having 2 mics, unless, you know, you want that kind of closeness, more definition. I mean, it shows you how important a room is. Let me turn off the reverb here. So this is what like the actual sound of the drum is. Kind of hear some of the actual room, but if I put the tree mic on, you can hear how different the tree sounds from the close. And you see how important the sound of the studio it was recorded in, how important that is, you know. Just show you again. I mean, if I put the close through reverb, I mean, it might kind of work, but not really. Because I always put subtle reverb on percussion. But you put the tree with the reverb. So that's your fine drums. Metal Shop, who can imagine? Who can guess what this is going to sound like? Okay, so this is the metal sounds. very metallic. Again, metal sounds are normally good for adding to accents to make them sound a little bit bigger. Then we've got some sub hits. These are basically, you know, they're subs. So, you know, for your subwoofer, these things will make them rumble. Again, good for layering on accents. Normally, I mean, a lot of people ask me what I use for drums, and it's always a hard, like a hard question for me to answer, because I use a lot of different drums for like different parts. So for accents, for example, so accents being important beats that need to be emphasized, I'll normally have like 6 different drums. You know, like I'll have a sub drum, I'll have a metal drum, I'll have the mid drum, I'll have a high snappy thing. But then for, you know, drum passages which need a bit more power, I'll have maybe 4, you know, like some like end of days accenting the accents in that rhythmic part as opposed to the actual accent of the phrase. So, you know, it's you know, having lots of different sounds in drums is very important, and these sub ones are great for, I've already used these I think in trailers, which is good. And then we've got the toms, and these are all the way up here. What they sound like without the tree mic. Just the close mic, just the tree mic. Funny enough, without the close they sound bigger. So that's the you know, you got loose as well. Okay, maybe loose doesn't, oh, I haven't loaded it in, that's why. The loose ones just sound louder to me. Okay, so then we've got toms mid. No, toms low. Let them load in first. By the way, the snap, for some reason they've got all 3 microphone positions on this one. And these are cool sounding, you know. And I'll just quickly show you the mid. So we've still got other sections to get to. By the way, the reason it keeps snapping is because it isn't fully loaded in. This is Contact's background loading. So it's actually loading in the samples while I'm playing it. And it doesn't like that very much. Cool. So they're the drums, you know, plenty of percussion going on. But now we move into the let me just check I haven't got anything else that I've missed. Down here we have, what's this, choir? So that's choir, so we don't need to cover that. Yeah, so now let me just show you some of the that's pretty much the orchestral. These are the sounds I will use all the time whenever I'm using soft. I mean, the percussion is a bit strong for some of the soft things, but you know, I can use those percussion in other things, so you know, it's not a waste by any stretch of the imagination. So now we're going to go into the Byron tapes, and Byron tapes are basically loops. So I'm at 90 BPM, and I'll just show you what they are. I won't show you them all, but basically they're like little musical loops, you know, fun places for inspiration. And these are basically, they sound like almost like different mixes of the same thing. So they're cool little, just little grooves, you know, particularly if you're in like advertising or something. They're an interesting little addition. I'm not particularly sure what the intent with these is. are, I should say. But they're a fun little addition. Are we going to crash? Are we going to crash? No, we're going. So a fun little addition. Personally, I haven't used these much, but you may. The Fenton reversals are actually kind of cool. They're basically like they're like almost like risers. So you know, transitional things to get from one section to another. And you can use the mod wheel. Like if it takes too long to start, you know, you can just move the mod wheel up. And so that's basically what these are. I'll just show you some of the grubby ones because I like a bit of grubby. So yeah, they're the reversals. I'm just kind of glancing through these because personally I haven't used them much, but there are people who will use them. And then last of all, you get the steam band, which is kind of cool. Like before I show you all these, so the things I showed you in the track that I used, like I mentioned, these videos are all about how I would personally use them in my music, and I normally write like these kind of film score type things. So just because I'm glancing over, like, you know, the reversals and the pads, don't mean that that doesn't mean that they're not useful. It just means that personally I don't use them. So, you know, don't get the wrong idea. I'm not hating on these. I just haven't used them much. So these are basically like they've taken their source audio and then you made some sound design with them. And the fun thing about these is they're actually kind of cool to layer some of these in with the soft strings and such. I did try it, but it got a little bit too aggressive for the pieces I was writing. And if you've got Symphobia, it reminds me very much of the Dystopia section, you know, just like the little, it's like added value, you know, just having those extra patches. And you never know when these are going to come in handy. It's kind of funky. And then swellers, I imagine these are what they sound like. They're actually kind of like drones. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything. So yeah, that is pretty much what Albion 2 Loegria. I'm sure someone will correct me. So, like, my opinion on this library is, and again, this is just my opinion. You know, you're allowed to think differently. The reason I would personally buy this library is, it's the first library I've heard in a long time that does the soft articulations. You know, there's no such thing but perfectly. You know what I mean? They're as close to perfect as you're going to get there. They've got everything that like soft sounding instruments need. You know, they've got the air about them. They've got the fact that they're smaller sections playing soft. Like, you can have smaller sections doing normal recordings and it would sound, you know, it would be passable. You could make a soft section, but because these sound like they're playing the notes soft, it's very good for creating that kind of the air of the strings. You know, in that environment, in that kind of you know, the sound of the strings is you get that feeling of air in the room, which I think is the most important thing about doing soft. So for me personally, and like my opinion on it is, if you're looking for soft instruments, particularly strings, the strings in this are my favorite part, then this is where I will go now. Whenever I've got a track that needs soft strings, I'm instantly going to go for Albion 2. And back to what I was saying earlier, Albion 2 isn't a replacement for Albion. It's a standalone thing. The way to think of it is, Albion is one library, Albion 2 could be called something else. They could have just called it Loegria, instead of Albion, and that would have made sense. So don't think that Albion 2 is like Albion 1 plus. It's a completely different approach. It's the soft approach, it's the delicate and the air approach. So if you're wanting that sound of air in your tracks, I think this is where you should go. As you could probably tell by this video coming out quite late, this was released quite a long time ago. I'm quite late to the party, and now that I've got it, it's in all my soft tracks. So I hope I've been able to show it to you guys well enough that you've got an idea of how it's useful. And if you've got any comments or questions, write them down below, and I do try my best to answer them all. So I hope you found this video useful. If not, I apologize, but yeah, cheers for watching, guys, and I shall see you in the next video.